Welcome to episode 7 of the Walking Home podcast. This is our first in real life, IRL version of it. I'm joined by my friend Aildrene, and we're going to share some thoughts around creativity, around taking time off from work to explore our creative passions and the different kind of things that come with that, the good, the challenging, and all of that. We're in Manila. We're in the university.
We're in the University of the Philippines.
University of Philippines, a very interesting place. Recommend visiting. Is this what's the name of this museum?
So this is the Vargas Museum.
Okay, we're sitting in front of Vargas Museum. Has some beautiful art, and at some point we might kind of move around a little bit, so you might hear some change in tones, but hopefully the audio will be enjoyable enough to listen, and maybe some nice background ambiance. Within 2 weeks of stopping work, I actually wrote a post. I didn't publish it, but it was essentially being like, I think everybody should do this. I think everybody should quit their job. Like I think it's a very underrated thing to do. I never had a gap year, and I always kind of was jealous of that concept because I had no idea what I was doing going into university, and I think I would have really benefited from something like that. You know, and it is a privilege, you know, and you know, we don't take that for granted. That it is a privilege to be in the financial space, to be like, this is even a possibility for me. It's even a possibility for me to take off a month, several months, a year, whatever, to do that. It's absolutely a privilege, but
I agree.
acknowledging that, I think if you have that privilege, then I think you're doing yourself a great investment to take it. You're doing yourself a great service to take it, and you're doing yourself potentially a disservice to not take it.
Yes. And I totally agree about the privilege thing, but another way to reframe it is that for me, it's also a privilege. It's even a luxury for me because I've never imagined that I'd be in a place where I can do it. But another way to reframe it for other people who would like to take it is that maybe your budget for monthly luxuries can go towards a fund, like a freedom fund for a year. And that's doable if you frame it that way. There's no prescription on which age you should take this.
People spend money on the dumbest stuff, you know. I mean, they really do, and we do it for all kinds of reasons, for comfort, for image, for whatever. But I think we really do undervalue that freedom, you know. Like, live in a smaller apartment, cooking, do what it takes to give yourself space and opportunity to reflect, to explore sides of yourself. Because I have times of doubt, but I have undoubted gratefulness for taking this step. It's just it can seem like a silly thing to do, you know. Like, we both took this step at not weak points in our kind of careers, you know. We both took this step at points in our careers that our past selves would envy, that others would envy, others would dream. We're potentially dream positions, but even dream positions can be a gift in showing you that isn't really what you needed.
Exactly.
Or that isn't really what you desired, you know. Like, I thought what I desired was to be able to work and travel the world, and having done that, I'm now seeing that that wasn't what I really desired. What I really desired was be able to express myself creatively. Was be able to, well, not even express myself creatively, but be able to express myself. And have the space and energy to take care of myself through, my practices that are important to me, meditation, yoga, not be stressed in life, to have time and space to take care of myself and reflect and do these things, right? One thing I've been thinking about recently is it's a very cliche question. What would you do if money wasn't an object, right? We've all heard this question. We've all been asked this question. We've all even thought about it. I think that's the question that I need to be answering right now. I think I need to, instead of grinding, instead of hustling to make it, to make money, to get successful in this time off, that's not the answer for me. That's not what I want. The answer for me is to have time to meditate, have time to do yoga, and have time to create things, say things, put out things that are authentic to me and the things that I want to put out. That's what I would do if money wasn't an object. So I think it's a really valuable thing to save up enough money and actually do that.
Yes.
Do you resonate with that?
Yes, totally. And because when I left my workplace, I also had the same question. Actually, there's an addition to that. Like, what if money and time weren't an issue? What would you do with your life, right? And for me, the longest answer has been to just create stuff. And by that, I know it's very vague, but since I was a kid, there's always a desire for me to create things, whether it's art, whether it's, I don't know, written stuff, poetry, stories. There's always that urge for me to produce something. And unfortunately, as we enter the real world, producing something has to be of commercial value. Otherwise, how would you survive this world? And so, but this whole gap here kind of gave me that space or privilege to actually challenge that. Like, what would you create if it's something that's not gonna give financial returns, right? And to be honest, I'm still discovering, I'm still, my hands are still full. I'm still, trying all sorts of different things, but I like the journey. I like the exploration. And I'm just satisfied with how things are. I'm just satisfied with how you're able to create without that kind of pressure.
And I think you put it beautifully, and I think I can't help but think that that's something everybody should experience, and everybody deserves to experience, because it's such a common story, and I can think of people in my life when I say that, who had dreams, had aspirations, had things they were interested in, but put them aside to do the practical thing.
Yeah.
And I understand that, because there are all kinds of pressures, there are all kinds of stories that we're told about the world, and I'm not saying those stories are untrue. There's real challenges and real contexts and situations, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you forget that matters. That it matters more than a lot of things that we put emphasis on, right? It matters more than you buying the nicest car, or you going on the nicest vacation, or you whatever other things you're spending your resources on. It's possible to do with less. It's possible to do with less than I think people are willing to admit. But this fear, But yeah, I think everybody deserves to like give themselves a period where they're like, I know you think that if you pursue that thing, you're going to fail and not make money. I know people told you that.
Mm.
I've sat in front of family telling their children that like, yeah, they could pursue that, but the reality is that, it's going to be really hard for them to make money in it. I've sat in front of people telling their very creative children that, and it's heartbreaking because that's how they feel, and that's how they make their kids feel. Very creative people, very creative people. Um, so I think you owe it to yourself. I think you owe it. I think people owe it to themselves to do what is necessary to give yourself that space. And I would say a year is probably the minimum for comfort.
Mm. Mm.
Because when
Yeah.
you get less than that, I think it becomes quite stressful.
Yeah.
I think a year is probably the minimum for comfort.
Also because, so I'm halfway through. You're 5 months in, right?
I'm 2 months in.
2 months in. Sorry, I keep saying you're 2 months in. I'm 6 months in. To be honest, the first few months, it's all about trying to live life, and like this is what you've been deprived of:
Yeah.
proper sleep, proper rest,
Deprogramming.
deprogramming. So, or
Like-
traveling for some people.
Knowing you don't need a hustle, like just kind of like
Yeah.
stop working.
Yes.
Stop
Yes.
thinking about work.
Yes. And for, if you're like me who went into it without 100% clarity on the things that I would love to explore, like for me, I kept it open-ended.
Yeah.
Then it also took me maybe a month or so to finally start the gears and go back to exploration. And so the real action starts at maybe month 5, at least for me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's the time when, okay, I'm finally starting to create the things I wanted to create. So again, it varies for different people. If you have less time, fine, then maybe you can plan for it a bit more at the start, or do a bit less of deprogramming. I don't know. But yeah, a year is a good time for it. And going back to the pros, one of the things, and to pursuing interests, is that one of the things you discover is that sometimes, say you grow up as an adult and you have a baggage of 10 things you always wanted to do as a child, and then you finally have this time, you finally have a gap here, you realize that out of those 10, when you start pursuing them, maybe I didn't really like this. Maybe I was just influenced by my playmates before.
Yeah.
Maybe out of those 10, maybe you come up with, or you end up with 3, which is more beautiful because you don't live up to 60,
Yeah.
then regretting, like always having that question in the back of your mind, what if I become a writer, a painter, and so on and so forth. And then discovering towards the end of your life that, okay, maybe I wasn't really meant to be a writer at all.
Yeah. Maybe that wasn't really your passion.
Yes.
I 100% agree. I thought I knew what I wanted out of this break, but going into it, it gave me time to kind of like process.
Yeah.
And to think about, and I feel, and I was having a bit of an existential crisis around it like last week. And for a long time I thought it would be really cool to be like a travel creator. It'd be really cool. And I was telling my partner last week, I was like, I don't really want to do that. Like that's not what I find meaningful. I know that's kind of like what I think people want, or I think that's something that's popular, and I see people doing that and they're successful and it looks cool, but I don't think that's what I want. And
It's beautiful.
that's, yeah,
Because you discover things like
yeah. Instead of like living with, like I know I was also telling her later, like I think if I went back to teaching now, because I was a teacher before, I think I would go with greater peace than before. I think I would go back with greater peace than before, because creativity for me needs to be free, needs to have freedom. And for creativity to have freedom, it needs to be separate from commerce. It needs to be separate from making money. It needs to be not tied to it. It needs to be not dependent on it. Not that, I mean, it's beautiful if people if it comes, it's beautiful, but it needs to not be dependent on it for it to feel free to me, for it to feel authentic to me. And so what I'm realizing about the creator space is that it is very tied to it. It is very kind of, mixed with it. And that's an aspect of it that I'm finding difficulty in balancing, right? At the end of the day, I'll need to make money from some way. The dream would be to be an artist and to authentically create and be compensated for those authentic creations. That is the dream. But if that doesn't happen, then it's not it like I don't know if I prefer to be making videos for resorts or being teaching in a classroom. I think I actually might prefer teaching in a classroom, because teaching in a classroom for me still is purposeful. It's still like, it feels more meaningful at times, depending on the subject, depending on the school, depending on a ton of factors that go into that kind of realm. But it feels more meaningful and more purposeful and more beautiful. It can, than maybe just making commercial videos for resorts. Maybe, right? I don't know. But those are questions that are getting answered, and that's a beautiful thing. That I'm giving myself up, instead of letting those questions sit within me for a lifetime. Right? And that's what we do. That's what the commonplace is. We let those questions sit in us for a lifetime. Why does somebody who loves singing have to wait until retirement to sing? Or somebody who plays guitar wait until whatever to explore that, or limit themselves to it as a hobby. Like,
Which is a revelation as well. I just remembered when I talk to people about this idea of a gap year, or early retirement or FIRE. I don't know if you agree with this, but with Americans, they're sold with the idea.
they're what?
They're sold with the idea. They can really see the value in it. But I once shared it with a group of Europeans, for example,
Yeah.
and they were like, "What? What is that?" And that was a light bulb moment for me, because in their culture, like, work-life balance is more of a must. Like in some countries,
Yeah. Work is in the center of their world.
yes. Like in France, for example, everything is closed in August. Like people literally take a break during summer.
Yeah.
Most of Europe. So it kind of, you can cut this off if it derails from the topic, but it kind of shows that if people are given the chance to really pursue their lives outside of work, then maybe it's almost equivalent to getting a gap year, right?
Yeah.
If work wasn't, if work didn't take so much.
I think it certainly makes it less necessary.
Yes, exactly. Then you don't have to wait until the end of your career to pursue the things you want to do.
If work doesn't feel like your entire life,
Yes.
and you have the time and the energy to pursue those passions, right? Like, then it can feel less necessary. I don't know what that feels like. Like I don't think I've ever had a job where it hasn't been so consuming, whether in time or energy or both, where I felt like I can't. It's been, I don't know. I mean, it's there are people who do it, right? There are people who do it. There are people who have jobs and they pursue their passions and their creativity on the side, and kudos for doing that. I think it's certainly admirable to do. So 100%, I think if that's what you can do right now, then do that.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
because not everybody can. Not like you got rent. You know,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
not everybody is in the again financial position to make that happen. I think it's a worthy investment to explore how you could be in that position. You know, depending on your lifestyle and things like that. But even with that in mind, people can be in very hard circumstances where even that's not imaginable. Okay,
Yes.
I was in a very lucky situation with my position as an international teacher. That was primarily how I was able to make up my savings. Right, like they were paying for my housing, and I early on I learned about investing, and I was able to make some investments, and so on and so on and so on. I was able to like put together enough where that made sense, right? But that's a lot of ifs. There's a lot of context to me being in that position. So 100%, if you're not in that position, I think
There are ways to still,
yeah, there are ways to still kind of give yourself that. But yeah, if you can get to there, I think it's a really beautiful thing to be like, I don't need to think about work at all for this amount of time. I'm just going to focus on my passion, and when my money is at 50%, 40%, 30%, whatever I feel comfortable with, you know, I'm going to reflect and see what my options are. And that's kind of like, that's what I told myself. That's what I told my partner. It's like, I'm not going to just burn down the house, and be homeless. I want myself, and I want us to have a comfortable life together. That's important. There's the base of the pyramid to care about, right? So I'm going to be cognizant of that. I have a teaching license, right? I have savings. I have a number in mind. For me, it's around 50%. Around 50% is not necessarily the stop point, but it's a reflection point. So yeah.
Good, good. That's exactly what.
Yeah.
That's also the same plan for me.
Yeah. You're setting the stop point more on financial terms than time terms.
Initially, time terms, but I think financial is also a good one, because if eventually you find out that you still have some funds left, you haven't reached that, point of reflection, in your case 50%, then you can buy some more time, right? Like a year could be a year and a half or 2 years, which still isn't bad as long as you have that thing, your basic needs covered. You have that.
And depending on how valuable that is, you could potentially make some lifestyle choices that could allow you to that point, right?
Yep.
Maybe I'm at 60% and I'm like, okay, what can we do that's in between? For us right now, it's exploring different kind of opportunities, such as volunteer opportunities that align with our values and our goals and things like that, right?
And also, during that time, and this is one of the pros that I'll be talking about, is that it's a great time to learn new skills, and skills that you actually care about.
Yeah.
Like, say you really wanted to learn programming or coding or whatever, AI stuff.
Yeah.
It's a perfect time to do that, because you're not limited with you can learn as much as you want.
Yeah.
And there's a promise, if you still think that maybe sometime you're gonna go back to the workplace, to the market, then that time that you spent learning these skills that you actually care about, maybe some of them are actually valuable in the marketplace, so to speak.
I was speaking with a friend of mine, and he was arguing that it's probably a better time than ever to do that, because we're in such a kind of uncertain time.
Oh yes.
I mean, from all terms, financial terms, geopolitical terms, technology terms, we're in such uncertain times. So, is there any better time than now to advance your other passions and skills, and see what's there, and give yourself a shot.
Yeah.
Give yourself a chance, because so many of us have been told Yeah, but you're not gonna make money from that.
Right.
Yeah, but you're not gonna be successful. And beyond that, so many of us have internalized that. And that's a, I was gonna curse, so it's good that that's a terrible thing. That's a terrible thing. That's a devastating thing. I think that's a really, like, you know, I've seen it in person. I've been live in that moment, and it's a devastating thing to see. It's a devastating thing to see, because, mate, you got this life. Like, this life, it's yours.
Yeah.
You're going to die. Everybody who told you not to use your life in this way, they're also going to die. And a lot of them die miserable. A lot of them die with regrets. Most of them die with regrets. Most of us are dying with regrets. In this kind of developed world, most of us are dying with regrets because we're just following a structured path laid out in front of us, blindly. So
Should we?
recognize the ephemeral nature of life. You know, recognize that this like my favorite comparison is one of my favorite comparisons is to a dream. It's a dream, right? Like, just like you're in a dream, it's going to end, right? Like, if you like, I have a video actually just on this topic, but like, the essential premise is, if you were in a dream and you was, you know, one of those like lucid dreams, right? You could do whatever you want. Would you sit in a boring office job? Right? You have this incredible experience of life, this play, this dramatic play, this cosmic play, where you get to choose your character, you get to choose your role, you get to choose what you do, and you're going to sit in an office because some people told you that if you pursue things that you're interested in, you're not going to make money. It's devastating. It's like, for me, it really is tragic. It really is tragic. Like, I mean, the number of, like, it's like, you know, when I really think to it, there's countless people, family, friends that I know, who I know there are things they're passionate about that they didn't pursue, that they're not pursuing because of fear of what other people think, because of fear of failure, because of, like, these things. And it's you know, there's like this really beautiful video by Jim Carrey where he talks about his father. I think he was a jazz musician, I don't know, but he essentially became an insurance man, and he failed at that. And the premise is, oh, maybe he was a comedian, I don't know, right? He had this kind of like passion, and he had this talent, and the idea is that, you know, my dad failed at doing what he didn't want. You know,
That's tragic.
and it's tragic because he was happy doing what he wanted. So, yeah, I think that's the worst. And I kind of mentioned that to you before, that for me the worst version of this year off is the version where I look back and I say I didn't do what I wanted to do, and I failed. And I'm not, well, like, for me if I don't do what I wanted to do, and even if I'm financially successful, I think part of me will know that it's a failure. But especially if I'm not financially successful
And you didn't.
and I didn't do, then it's like, and I've experienced that. I've experienced you know, making videos, doing things in the way I didn't want, and failing. I've experienced that at least once very vividly, you know, maybe in some forms twice. So yeah, I think I owe it to myself to within my own means. I owe it to myself to explore what I can.
Right.
Okay, so one thing we can talk about is 2 months in, 6 months in. What could we have done differently?
Oh, a lot of things for me. First, yes, financial preparation is a must, but also running different types of scenarios. So, for example, in my case, I'm basically responsible for my family as well. So there were some health emergencies. So you have to factor them in your budgeting as well. And also be prepared for the fact that maybe for the first time in your life, at least in my life, for the first time in my life, the bank account is going down instead of going up. There's no replenishment.
That is
That is-
not a comfortable feeling.
Exactly. Exactly. That's really psychologically.
I think each time.
No
For
one
me,
can
for me, it's
compare it.
monthly because I use credit cards quite a lot. So it's like I don't think about it, and then it's paying off, and then it's like, and I have a lot of my finances in the markets. So it's like selling off items, and then it's like sometimes the market's down,
Right.
and then it's like, whoo.
Yes.
Sometimes the market's up, and it's like okay, it stings a little less, but sometimes the market's down. But you still gotta pay that bill.
Yes. So this is like the other side of it. The other side is all, beautiful feelings, comfortable feelings, giving you a sense of relief and control. But at the same time, you live in a physical world where you need to survive and also have, some buffer. So yeah, that's one recommendation. Build a buffer around it. If you have a number in mind, maybe multiply that number by 2 or reduce the time. So if you were planning for a year, then maybe plan for 6 months instead if you have money for a year. So that's one.
You definitely. There's a good chance you'll burn for money faster than you think.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
If you're asking yourself these questions, if you're thinking about this, which means you haven't done it yet, you're probably already quite hesitant about all these things. You're probably already considering all these kind of like negative outcomes. So I don't want to say think about it more. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to consider.
That's a good one because I don't know, for me at least, I had this fantasy I think for more than 10 years now. It's been a long time fantasy of me. I've been overthinking like this whole thing. I've always wanted to do it. Except that, of course, in the earlier years of my career, of course, I didn't have the means. And this is where I keep on saying that although it's not a privilege for many to have this kind of break, but if you have that vision, like you can dedicate some years towards building that nest egg to make your dream gap year come true. But anyway, that overthinking of almost 10 years, that's a lot. I could have done it much earlier.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're already in that turning point, just do it now.
Yeah. I think if you have a reasonable amount saved, where it's not a matter of where you can ask the question, can I do it, right? If you're asking if you're at a point of like doubt of like, can I do it, will things go wrong, that means you're at a certain level where you reasonably could, but there's chances you could fail, right? You're at a reasonable threshold to even ask that question. Otherwise you wouldn't even be asking that question. You'd be like, I just can't do it, right? I think if you're at that point, then my say is do it. And be conscious of it. I think financial limit is probably a better way to go than time limit.
Yeah.
Because our world runs on finance, and your freedom is based on finance. To some degree. To some degree, there are people who with very little means are traveling the world and doing all kinds of things through volunteering and odd jobs and whatever. But that's neither here nor there. That might not be your goal, right? That might not be what you're going for, right? Have a idea of what your comfort is, of how low you're willing to go, of what your plan B potentially would be. Some people say don't have a plan B. I think those people are lying. I think that everybody has a plan B, right? Everybody thinks of worst case situations. Even if later they said I didn't have a plan B, they had a plan B. You know, everyone like there's so many successful people who are like, I knew this is where I was going. And you watch one of the older kind of like things, and it's like, I'm just doing this for 6 months, okay? Most people have a plan B because most people are realistic, right? Like this is like nothing's guaranteed. So it's okay to have a plan B. It's okay to have those things, and then just go for it. And if your money just lasted 6 months, and you got to a point of reasonably, you should look for income. You should look for a job. You should reflect on your options. Then do that. But even those 6 months, I think if you engage with them authentically, and you give yourself real opportunity to pursue the things you wanted to pursue or whatever, I think you'll find value in them. I think you'll definitely find value in them. So many of us are just going from job to job on success metrics and not thinking about what we really want to be doing, not just what we want to have. Life isn't just about having, it's about doing, it's about how you spend your time. So yeah,
One of the beautiful things during
I think what on the point of what I would have done differently, I think I would have done it sooner, actually.
okay.
Like I planned to do this last year. My original plan was to do this last year. I wrote it down. I even had a video idea. There was some like actual kind of like things where I met my partner, and then I had to kind of rethink the financial aspect of it. And there are parts to it, but there's also just fear. Like my situation hasn't changed a lot since last year. I don't think I'm actually in a better financial position than I was last year. It's just I finally came to the conclusion that I'm not going to regret this. I think I finally came to the conclusion that I'm not going to regret this. I need this, which is okay. I think maybe you need a certain level of conviction. Maybe it's good to reach a certain level of conviction.
And sometimes external factors do play a big role in that level of conviction, in that like it pushes you to do it finally. For some people, it's probably a toxic job that finally lets them realize there's more to life than what they're doing. Or for some people, it can be, unfortunately, maybe a tragedy in the family, or a loss of a job or a career, or any big turning point in life. You can reframe it that way as well, right?
There can be blessings in those tragic moments that awaken us to the ephemeral nature of this life, the ephemeral nature of this life, and the fact that it's going to end, and the fact that it's ending at each moment, and that it's limited, and don't wait till retirement to experience freedom.
Let's go to the smaller
use your youth. Put your youth to use.
I like that.
Put your youth to use. Like, I know older people in my life. I'm sure you know older people in your life. I would never say it's late to pursue your passions, but the earlier the better. The earlier the better. Like if you can have 60%, 70%, 80% of your life living in your passion, living with your passion, having experienced your passion. Maybe you experience your passion for 1 year, and then you go back to kind of a career path, but at least you know that knowing of what it's like to live with your passion is going to influence the rest of your life from that moment on.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, that's one of the valuable things I learned during this whole time, is that before taking this break, passion is such an abstract thing. Like, when I achieve this, I will do this thing. But when you finally get there and you see the concrete details of what it means to pursue your passion, whether it's, I don't know, cooking, writing, or doing videos, then you realize that even your passion, it has a, a small thing component to it, like the small things that are mundane, and then you get to confront yourself. Is this really what I wanted to do? And is this really what inspires me? On the other hand, it could be the other way around. You discover that these things are mundane, but even if it's so mundane as, getting paint for your watercolor or something, but you love it, then it's a good preview, right?
Yeah.
You can pursue it on the sides if you go back to a career.
It allows you to it allows you to reflect on how you're living your life and how you're using your time.
It's a good test.
It's a good test. It's a good test to see what matters to you. Like, don't wait till the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the smaller things, what were the small things you've discovered? Some small delights, some small things you tried. Any discoveries?
It's been realizing that there were things that I wanted to do, and for me, those like a lot of it is self-care. A lot of it is like the meditation and the yoga and these things that I was doing early on. Like I remember, like when I got a full-time job teaching, me kind of resenting work in a way because it made doing those things very hard. It made finding time to do those things very hard. And then above that, finding time to be creative very hard. So I think having the privilege to do my practices fully engage with them, and then from the other side of that, these are practices that inspire reflection. Be rewarded with the reflection that comes from that, and put that reflection to use. I think it's something that I'm just starting to return to. Again, early on in my kind of like, I actually did once take an intentional gap year. Now that I think back to it, it wasn't fully intentional because I was looking for work, but I took use of it, and like I was making videos, I was taking care of myself and things like that. And when I went to work, I still valued those things highly. But the more I worked, the more time passed, the more I fell into the career path, the less I gave importance to those things. And those were the things that were filling my creative well. And now I'm looking at my creative well and I'm feeling like it's drier than it was. And I'm returning to those, and so that's a gift that the time has provided me, and it's about 2 months in that I'm realizing that that's actually where I should be putting more of my attention.
I mean, I'm excited for you. You have more months to come. You have more time to live that life.
Yeah.
Amazing. For me, the smaller things are really tiny, but when you look at it, wow. For example, I've accumulated a ton of watch later videos on YouTube. When you find a video you want to watch and you save it as watch later, my bookmarks have, I don't know, it's up to 1,000 videos that I needed to watch. But just having some time to go through them finally and with intention, amazing.
Yeah.
And some of the new interests, like trying totally different stuff like parkour, what else? Yoga, things like that. It's just.
You doing some parkour?
Amazing. Yes, I did a parkour class once.
Okay.
I've never thought I'd do it,
Beautiful.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it's just amazing.
Just exploring other sides of your humanity, your being, and you might do something and be like, okay, one time, good, and you might do something and be like, wow, this is another dimension of myself that I want to feed. All right.
Awesome.
Should we close it out?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Any final words?
We don't know what we're talking about, so you're also gonna go through the same thing, and it's a nice adventure.
Yeah, I think if you clicked on this video, or you've watched until this point, you're probably either doing it or you should do it. True. So you already know that give your inner voice some credit. You know, you don't need to listen to us. Listen to yourself. Thanks for watching, and take care. See you later.